So we made the council a little less powerful and the mayor a bit more powerful. And future mayors use that power pretty effectively. So that now it really is Garcetti's government. It was really Villaraigosa's government. To go back to your example, it really resonates from LA. Council members in LA used to call up department heads and issue instructions to them. They're actually not supposed to do that. And by the way, if you look at your San Jose charter, I'll bet you'll find something that's called the non-interference clause. But the council members never actually admit is in their charter that says you may not issue instructions to departments except through either the mayor or the city manager. In LA, they're doing it all the time, all the time.
We have priority setting, which we just went through, so this whole priority setting.
Yeah. And what does that mean then?
That means that the council gets votes on which policies get worked on and in which order.
Well, that's not bad. So if you all heard that, they voted on what priorities policies should be worked on by government. Now, you're not giving a direct instruction to an employee, which would be real interference. But they don't do that much anymore. But what ended up happening in LA that almost solved the problem is when the voters passed term limits in 1990, and this is before your time, it used to be a very well-paid position in Sacramento. They had no term limits. People loved being in Sacramento because they could be there forever. They could be an assembly member for 20, 30 years. The voters cut their salary, reduced their staff, and put term limits in. So a lot of the legislators began to decide that it was better to be an LA city council member than to be an assembly member or a senator. LA had term limits, but it also paid $178,000 a year. You lived close to home, had big staffs. The staff where I worked was as big as a congressman's staff. Huge staffs. 2 field offices. I mean, it was great. So they all came back, and now what you end up having is a council president who's a former speaker. You have a majority of the council have served in the state legislature. The good news and bad news. The good news is they don't interfere with the operations of the departments as much because they're used to being legislators. So they're busy cooking up ideas that everybody should wear orange t-shirts every Friday, and trying to get 8 votes for it. But that's a good use of their time. It's actually a very professional council now. So you have less of that problem. On the other hand, it's a much more boring council. When I worked at City Hall, there was nobody from Sacramento. There were people from all walks of life, some of whom were quite drunk during council meetings and very colorful when they were drunk. Others were like community people who had worked for years and only ate fish, and like Marvin Rowdy, only ate a particular kind of fish. My boss used to get in big arguments with a guy who was drunk, and they would call each other names. You never knew what was going to happen at the city council. Being a council president was like having a family of 15 that didn't like each other, all of them had different parents. That's kind of what the city council was like. It was, every day was just glorious. And there were no simple majorities on anything. And the council president would always be walking around like a parent, kind of like, why am I doing this? Well, now, the council's more like a legislature. All the votes are 15-0. Occasionally, it's 14-1 when somebody needs to make a point to their district about how hard they've been fighting the establishment. So then it becomes a 14-1 vote. And a lot of the things are decided privately, even though they're really not supposed to do that so much. And it's very professional and very boring. But it's probably better for city employees in that it's more professional. You don't have this sort of constant bugging people.